order. There are a few seats up in the front if people are looking for additional seats. We have a crowd. It's fun. We'll begin with the roll call, and this time I'll actually call the roll. Jeffrey McAnalloy. You can say you're here.
Here.
Claire Wilson.
Present.
Danny Peterson. And I'm Carol Gregory, and I'm the president of the board. In addition, Sally McLean, our superintendent, is sitting to my right. We will now have a presentation of the colors by the Federal White High School and Todd Beamer High School combined JROTC. JROTC, would you please stand?
Art.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item of business is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of June 10th, 2014 as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, we're going to begin with an introduction of the leadership appointments. We have made, the district has made some leadership appointments, primarily meaning principals, but other administrators as well. They are going to be voted on by the board in the consent agenda, but we want to introduce them to you before we proceed with that. So I'd like to call on Sally McLean to proceed.
Thank you, President Gregory. Starting with our elementary school appointments, I have Executive Director Cindy Black to introduce this evening's activity.
Yay, well, good evening, Board President Gregory, board members, and Superintendent McLean. I am very excited to introduce two new principals to you. So I'm going to ask Marla, come on up. This is Marla Newton, and Marla is the new principal of Olympic View. Marla comes to us from the Issaquah School District, where she's finishing up her 14th year as an instructional leader in the role of principal. For the 11 years that Marla has served in Issaquah, she was fortunate to lead 2 separate buildings. She's had experience with early childhood programs, Title Lab funding, self-contained special education, gifted and talented programs, general education, and enrichment. This past year, the work of her staff under her leadership was recognized by the state of Washington with the highest achievement award, stating overall excellence and special recognition in reading achievement. So we're very happy to have her join our team. And a little bit personal, Marla is the mom of 2 daughters, 9 years old and 11 months. She lives in the Renton Highlands with her husband, Winston. And in speaking with Marla, she shared that she's very excited to be coming to our district and specifically to Olympic View. And she looks forward to building new relationships, growing in Federal Way, and assuring that we will continue to do what's best for kids. So welcome, Marla. Thank you. Thank you. And next we have Michelle Frank. And Michelle is going to be our new interim principal at Adelaide. And a little bit about Michelle is that she grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And after graduating from Sierra High School, she attended the Colorado College in Colorado Springs, where she studied mathematics, chemistry, and pre-med. After receiving her bachelor's degree in chemistry, she began her career in education as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Fuji Islands. Once she returned to the United States, she attended the University of Hawaii, where she received a master's degree in counseling education. She then began working as a middle school counselor for 11 years and elementary for 6 years. She was encouraged to pursue her educational leadership, and so she did that in Colorado in 2008, and she's currently the assistant principal at Sequoia. And a little bit about Michelle is that her husband Tony is a telecom engineer, and his career brought them to the state of Washington in 2013. They have one son, Aaron, who's in the Army and stationed at Fort Drum, New York, along with his wife Lena and their 6-month-old daughter Emma. And she's very excited to be the new interim principal at Adelaide. So Michelle, welcome. So thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, both Michelle and Marla. We're very glad to have you here.
And next up, we have Executive Director of Instructional Technology, Ron Mayberry.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent McLean. Board members. I knew one of us would do that, right?
Yeah.
Thanks. So I have the pleasure of introducing a new principal for Internet Academy. So if Christine Corbley will come up and join me. A short bit of information about Christine. Christine's going to be splitting time with her current role at TFL, in which her title will be Coordinator of Instructional Material and World Languages, which gives us a nice blending of her work that will now start taking place at Internet Academy. As the principal of Internet Academy, she'll be working to take our Internet Academy to new and great places, and I look forward to seeing that work happen. She's 25 years of educator, 6 of those in Federal Way. Prior to joining TFL team, she was a coach at Thomas Jefferson. Her other roles have included small schools coach, university instructor, high school English, social studies teacher, and speech and debate coach. She's done a lot of work in working with coaching and professional development, and we have some really cool new blended learning projects going on that kind of blend her role with world languages and now online. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to round out this evening's leadership appointments, we have Assistant Superintendent Marie Verhaar of Teaching for Learning to talk about some director appointments.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent McLean. I have the pleasure this evening of introducing to you 3 new members of the Teaching for Learning department, and I'd like to ask them to come forward. Pam Tuggle, Liz Drake, and I think our 3rd member is not with us this evening. I'd like to begin with Pam Tuggle. Pam Tuggle, currently, you may know her as the principal of Lakota Middle School, and Pam will be changing roles next year. She's going to be joining the Teaching for Learning family as the Director of Student Intervention Services, working with Title I and LAP. Pam has been in our district for 25 years, and 11 of those years were right at Lakota Middle School. She had the proud pleasure of building that school and being the first principal in that beautiful new facility. She's been a dean in our district at Sahali, and she has been a K-6 special education teacher, an ELL, and intervention teacher at Twin Lakes Elementary. Join me in welcoming Pam Tuggle. Next, another familiar face in our district is Liz Drake, who is the current principal of Thomas Jefferson High School. And we are excited and thrilled to not only have Pam, but also Liz joining the Teaching for Learning family. Liz will be assuming the role of Director of Advanced Programs. She will be working with all of our high school programs, Cambridge, IB, AP, as well as our elementary highly capable program, and helping us to implement that new legislation. Liz began her career in 1972 as a kindergarten teacher in Chipping, Sudbury, England. 18 years she taught all primary grades, and she was actually the primary head principal, or the principal, in England at a school. Her first position in the American system was as an AP of 4th through 6th grade intermediate students in East Penn School District in 1995. She then moved to middle school principal and then to high school principal. In 2007, she moved to the West Coast and became part of the Federal Way family as the principal of Todd Beamer High School. And as I said, most recently, she's been the principal of Thomas Jefferson for 2 years. We are thrilled and excited to have Liz as part of our team. And finally, I'd like to introduce Ms. Ann Gray. Ann is the current principal of Adelaide Elementary. Ann is unable to join us this evening, but Ann will also be joining the Teaching for Learning family as the Director of Project Implementation. Ann is a 30-year veteran in education, 14 years of those in Texas, 16 in Washington. She began her career as a paraeducator, moved to special education teacher, was a counselor, assistant principal, and leadership development coordinator. Ann has been in the Federal Way School District for 4 years. Well, thank you for welcoming Ann Gray.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of June 10th, 2014 as submitted.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I second that motion.
Sorry. Discussion? Seeing none, all
I actually just would like to say welcome to all of our the new people that are in new positions, the new faces. It's fantastic just to have that tonight and to be able to hear about just the rich staff we have here in Federal Way Schools. So thank you for being here.
all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now we will move on to student, staff, and community recognition.
Good evening, President Gregory, members of the board, Superintendent McLean. That is hard to get used to. A great thing, however. I start tonight by introducing Cindy Black, Executive Director of Elementary Programs, who's already been up and gets to do some more. Cindy,
Yay, this
thank
is
you.
exciting
Yeah.
part. So good evening once again. Tonight is my pleasure to recognize Camelot. So I'm looking for Cindy Dracobly, Camelot principal, and the teacher who has also been leading this great work, who is Danny Fisher. Is Danny here? All right, so recently a team of students from Camelot Elementary took first place in the 28th annual Project Citizen State Showcase in Olympia. The event was judged by members of state legislatures, legislative staff, and educators. Camelot's team, led by teacher Danny Fisher, won first place for their Ban the Bag or Ban the Ban. Nope, Bag the Ban. I knew I was going to mess that up. Ban the Bag or Bag the Ban project. Contest entrants were challenged to identify a public policy problem in their community, develop a solution in the form of public policy, and create a political action plan. The students were judged based on a portfolio entry and oral presentations, and Camelot's portfolio will now be entered into the national Project Citizen event held in California later this year. So congratulations to Camelot.
Cindy, can you introduce the students who are up front, perhaps?
Cindy, let's let Cindy and the teacher.
Yeah, that's what I.
Let Danny,
Dan-
Mrs. Fisher.
Yeah, all students that are involved, could you please come up?
Yeah, if you're involved, we would like to have a picture of you, so.
I know they're not all here today, but some students were able to come
Yeah.
tonight. So I have Annie Berge, Kyla De La Cruz. I have Evie Stillebauer, Brendan Valise. I have Samantha Jimenez, I have Sharisha, and I have Samantha Corrales. Sharisha Ayers.
Me too.
Oh. You're fine. You got a white shirt on.
So if you don't want to stand behind me,
Before we move to the next one, I do want to encourage parents. I said to moms there to please feel free to go up and take pictures. That applies to anyone here. If you have students or family members being recognized, this is the fun stuff. We want you to take advantage of that. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Executive Director of Secondary Programs, Vince Blauser. Vince?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, send your applause. Here comes some Parade of Stars. President Gregory, members of the board, Superintendent McLean, I'd like to begin my Parade of Stars by asking, and I don't know if Joshua Dawson is in the audience. Is he here tonight? Oh, I was hoping he would. Mr. Latrell, would you be willing to stand in for him? Outstanding, because I'm going to read. This is just amazing stuff. And if you could share this with him. I'm proud to share that Mr. Dawson has recently been awarded the Gates Millennium Scholarship. This is pretty cool stuff, yeah. Just a little background. The Gates Millennium Scholarship Program selects 1,000 students talented students from around the United States each year to receive the Good Through Graduation Scholarship to be used at any college or university of their choice. And to fully understand this award, Good Through Graduation means the scholarship will pay all expenses as far as the student chooses to proceed, up to and including a doctorate. Think of that. That's a lot of money, right? And to be eligible, just a great student has to be enrolled first time in U.S. Located accredited college, university seeking a degree, and have a demonstrated leadership abilities through participation in community service and extracurricular and other activities. So, Joshua Dawson, when you see him, please congratulate him. He's an exceptional young man and well deserving of this scholarship. Will you do that for me? I will. All right, thank you. And I'm going to give you this. Thank you. All right, Parade of Stars, here we go. I'd like to invite the following students to come up front, and I don't know if they're here. I hope so. I didn't see it. There's a big crowd. Jacqueline Sherburne from Decatur. Hector Zaldivar, I'm sorry, from Todd Beamer. Are they anybody standing? Okay, I'm going to name these names as well. And if you're a principal of these folks and you're here, come on up. So Decatur, Hector Zaldivar from Todd Beamer, Dylan Dutray from Thomas Jefferson, and Janice Ho from Federal Way. All right. Chad, come on up. Let's see, TJ, Liz, come on up. You're going to stand in for these folks if they're not here tonight. Would you be willing? All right, these four amazing students who envisioned standing there were recently invited to the Governor's Mansion to receive the Comcast Leaders and Achievers Scholarship funded by the Comcast Foundation. This scholarship recognizes high school seniors from Comcast communities for their commitment to community service, academics, and demonstrated leadership. To acknowledge these accomplishments, each of these students were awarded a one-time grant of $1,000. So when you see these four great individuals, shake their hand and congratulate them for this scholarship, please. Thank you. All right. Cruising right along. Okay, let's hope these folks are here. Okay, can I have Alex Spencer? Is Alex here? How about Matt Russell? Alex Spencer, Matt Russell. Oh. make sure our invitation pipeline is good. Okay, then, so I need Principal Joni Hall and head golf coach Brent Briante to join me at the podium then. I got more to share. Did Brent make it tonight? Okay.
Brent couldn't make it tonight. He is coaching another game.
Okay, all right. So we're here tonight to highlight the Todd Beamer High School golf team for their recognition as the academic state champions. How cool is that? I know. There you go. The team average was a solid 3.64 GPA. As a team, that's pretty darn good. So, here to present the awards, and I'm going to accept the awards and their behalf.
Kids aren't here tonight?
Yes, is Miss Joni Hall from Todd Beamer.
Is Alex Spencer here or Matt? No, Matt.
Oh, I didn't make it. Okay.
Okay.
Well, what would
they're
you-
busy. They're probably playing golf.
There you go.
I am just really, really proud of these kids this year because student is the first word in that, and these kids have shown that not only can they manage their time, be organized enough to be excellent students as well as fabulous athletes. They can do those things both at the same time. So this is very, very meaningful for our school, and we will make sure that they all get the recognition that they deserve back at Todd Beamer. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
My guess is they're home studying, right? After golf. Okay. So, okay, next I would like to invite Lieutenant Colonel Randy Long and invite Major Barry Jones to the podium to recognize the Federal High School and the Todd Beamer High School JROTC units as they were recently selected to receive the Distinguished Units with Merit recognition. And also to have them introduce the recipient of the Washington State Air Force Teacher of the Year Award. Gentlemen.
Good evening. Well, both units this year were recognized as Distinguished Units with Merit, and essentially it's two different awards, but they combine them into one. Distinguished Unit with Merit means that not only were they distinguished in that they met their goals for the year, met or exceeded those goals, but they also received and exceeds standards, the highest rating the Air Force will give to a unit. So it's really a culmination of a lot of work by the cadets putting this together. Any Air Force headquarters inspection is a lot of work. They pulled together as a team and really made it happen. Colonel Gray, who was our evaluator, mentioned that I know for Federal Way program, just the involvement of our cadets and the programs that they are running, the cadets are running, are exemplary. So I'd like to present this award to our squadron commander for this year was Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Ben Swartz, and all his efforts as well as his staff's efforts to receive the Distinguished Unit with Merit.
I don't want to repeat Randy's comments because they apply to Todd Beamer High School JROTC as well, but I would like to mention a couple of things about Mary Lescano, who is our group commander. She is our cadet colonel and in charge of about 117 cadets. And her staff set 6 goals that applied to the community, to the school, the cadets. One of the goals was community service. And you know, the award is nice, but what's really pleasing and enjoyable is to watch the process. Because watching these kids setting the goals and then trying to achieve those goals and hitting the roadblocks and making adjustments, that was what was worth it. And that's what led to our cadets earning this award. I'd like to mention one of the goals that our cadets had, and it kind of blew the inspector away, Colonel Gray. He couldn't believe how many hours of community service our cadets were completing. The goal, or Mary's goal and her staff, the cadets' goal was to achieve 3,200 hours of community service, and as of yesterday, they had accomplished 4,450 hours of community service, which encompassed over 400 community service activities. So on behalf of the United States Air Force, Mary, congratulations to you and your staff. And we also want to thank Joni for her support, because without that support, you know, and her support was highlighted by Colonel Gray, the inspector. He was impressed by the amount of support that we received from our administrators and our staff. So we want to thank you, Joni, for your support as well. So thank you.
Can you go we got one more. Do we have address? Before they go? You want to get pictures first?
Oh, yes.
And then go get yours.
I'd like to invite Colonel Lance Bleakley here to the podium. And he is representing the Air Force Association, both the Seattle chapter as well as the state chapter. And he's going to announce this year's Air Force Association not only chapter Teacher of the Year, but also the Washington State Air Force Association Teacher of the Year. So Colonel Bleakley.
It's not a grab bag. Just a quick overview of the Air Force Association. I'm going to try and keep it under 30 seconds. We're 100,000 plus members nationwide. Not necessarily Air Force, but people who support education, and then the word support as far as the family goes, and then aerospace. So that's the mission. Education is number one. With that, every year we select within the chapters. We have 3 chapters in the state of Washington, one on the other side of the mountain, whoever they are, and then the 2 here. One McCord, and then basically we got further away north to the border. With that, we go out to all the school districts and look for the top person in STEM. This year, that's Jerry Glasser. By the way, we took him last year as a chapter 2, but he has been, come on Jerry, up please. He's been selected as the state representative, or chapter, and he's in a national competition. And as of this morning, are the recorders off? He's made it. He's made the first cut. So I just told him. So if you don't know what he does, besides teaching here, he's got a nuclear reactor, which he works with some other people here in the zone, and he's also a member of, see if I can get this right, Northwest Nuclear Consortium. Brain's the second thing to go. I've forgotten what the first is. With that, as a state, he's going to get a $500 check, which I'm going to give him tonight. And I'm glad, grab bag, so that we can get our paid political announcement. Here's your jacket, Air Force Association. Nice. Now the next most important thing, $500 check. And one last thing, certificate Teacher of the Year. And on the 12th, we're going to be awarding the Chapter of the Year at Todd Beamer. And one thing I'm going to say something, and I have been, as Jerry knows, and as Major Jones knows, I have been all over the world most of the time. I've worked with different units. I was the president of Hawaii and Guam with the Air Force Association, and never have I seen 2 things. One, I haven't seen anybody do what he does. I mean, I wish he'd been part of my staff at one time. And JROTC here is, as far as I'm concerned, is the best in the country that I've seen. That's Texas, California, Hawaii, Guam, and Pennsylvania. mind. This way. I'll help you hold it.
There you go. I'd love for you to go up front as well and be recognized up front. Please, please, come on. This is too good.
Tell me.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Congratulations, Mr. Glasser. Thank you. Well presented. Appreciate it. Pretty cool so far, huh? More to go. Next, I'd like to bring to the podium Interim Principal Chad Luttrell to talk about one of, I think, the greatest sports accomplishment that this district has ever seen. Mr. Luttrell, would you do the honors?
Absolutely. Good evening. I'd like to invite all of the boys and girls track teams for Federal Way High School to come up, please. Actually, just go ahead and come right up front. So go ahead and just come straight up front here.
So everybody can see your faces.
And while they're coming up, I want to recognize both our 2014 boys and girls track teams, as they not only both won the state title this year, but only the second time in state history that they went back-to-back. They both won the title last year. Both boys and girls track teams won the title again this year. Only the second time in state history. The first time was in 1985 by Garfield. So first, if you want to go ahead and give them a round of applause, it's pretty awesome. I just want to recognize our coaches, girls coach Quinn Gillis, boys coach Chris Williams. We have other coaches, Carrie Martin, Allie Wojciechowski, Eric JROTC, and I'm not sure, Gail Kuhlman. I'm sorry. Oh, and I'm sorry, Lindy Clark. I missed you. So just a couple of quick things. There are some standouts for sure, and sorry if I've missed anybody, but Keenan Curran, Mitch Stewart, Tyson Penn, and then girls here. But they've broke records. They've broke school records, state records, meet records. There's just been records broken all the way around. But Hannah Cunliffe, Mariah Vongzavang, Tamara Ritchie, Karis Cameron, Gabriella Pelogi, Audrey Shin, and I apologize if I miss anybody else, but those in particular, all of them broke multiple records, and so we are just very, very proud of them. So, again.
Oh, some amazing athletes. Congratulations. Next, this is last but not least for sure. Next, I'd like to invite the Totem AVID team to the podium, please. Anybody that represents Totem AVID, yeah. All right, so recently the authorities of the AVID Center honored Totem Middle School as an AVID National Demonstration Site validated through the fall of 2016. The authorities of the AVID Center shared with us, and I quote, as one of the selected group of sites so honored throughout the U.S., Totem Middle School is in the elite category among the more than 4,800 K-12 sites and 41 AVID for higher education sites in 45 states, the District of Columbia, and 16 countries and U.S. territories. We commend you and your AVID site team for your efforts on behalf of students whose futures are brighter because of your commitment to them. Principal Christine Baker, Administrative Assistant David Stone are both committed to and involved in AVID at Totem. Ms. Long is the AVID coordinator and has worked tirelessly to continue the excellence of the AVID program. A special thank you to Ms. Long, Ms. Patton, Mr. Miller, Ms. Sanders, Ms. Stipes, for working closely together to continue the quality of teaching and learning in the AVID elective and for promoting and supporting AVID school-wide. Congratulations to all of you for this recognition and for your continued work in the AVID program. Congratulations. Wonderful. All right. Let's see. You're going to introduce the next one? Okay. Thank you so much. This has been fun.
Thanks very much.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we move to the last award this evening, I did want to mention that Arlie, would you come forward, please? Arlie Rays, a member of the Camelot team, has come, and her mom. So I'd like to just mention that we've already heard about the team. I'd like, if we may, have also a picture up front with Arlie. Would you go up there? Thank you. You can go closer if you like. Thank you very much. Last tonight, I'd like to introduce David Brower, Principal of Decatur, for a very special award. David.
Thank you. I'm actually here representing the Association of Principals for Federal Way, and it is our pleasure we come together with the money that our principals pay for dues, and we like to pay that forward. And so we established a few years ago the Tom Murphy Scholarship for inspirational students. I brought with me, couldn't find Tom. He's out on the golf course somewhere, I'm sure. We're able to, I'd like to introduce his daughter, Caitlin Remington, who is going to tell us a little bit about the award, and we're going to then present to our students.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Remington, and this is my daughter, Ellie Remington. And we are here on behalf of my father, Tom Murphy, and we're honored to be presenting the Tom Murphy Inspirational Scholarship Awards on behalf, and they are sponsored by the Association of Federal Way School Principals.
Okay. So each of these students, graduating seniors, have achieved academic success. But it is the Inspirational Scholarship for kids who have achieved academic success while overcoming personal, sometimes medical or academic difficulties and hardships. And so we really feel that it's important to honor their achievements. Each of these students from our 7 high schools will receive a $500 scholarship from the association. So what I'd ask is if the principals can please come up here and come up front, and then we'll call our students down, and we'll get a group photo. So please join me in congratulating Travis Martin from Federal Way High School. Come on over here first. Right behind you, there you go.
Congratulations. Do you want to say congratulations?
All right, congratulations. Go up front. Next. Rosa Membrano from the Technology Access Foundation Academy. Next is Edgar Onofre from Thomas Jefferson High School. Next, Jasmine Johnson from Truman High School. From Todd Beamer High School, we'd like to congratulate Amber Kellum. From the Internet Academy, we'd like to honor Stefan Carey. And last but certainly not least, from Decatur High School, Nicole Ichinaga. Please join me in congratulating our 2014 Tom Murphy Inspirational Scholarship Award winners.
Do we? Oh, we're not doing that one. Thank you. Sorry, Paul. I'm sorry, Madam President and Madam Superintendent, would you mind staying there for just a minute? We did miss a photo opportunity with the Totem AVID team. So, thank you. Please come forward. Sorry. We demand it. Thank you.
Now we're moving on to the Lakota Integrated Environmental Sustainability Academy. Yeah.
I know Principal Pam Tuggle has a team of students here who have worked on a project that they want to present this evening. We probably have to wait just a second so they have room to bring their puppets up.
Well, while they're doing that, good evening, President Gregory, Board Directors, and Superintendent McLean. We have an academy that several years ago, some of our students who are now in high school said they wish they could have something regarding studying the environmental sustainability. So we're in our second year of having the Integrated Environmental Sustainability Academy. These students are second year students. They've been very dedicated and passionate about what they're going to bring to you tonight. So it's my pleasure to introduce two of our teacher leaders, Rasa Conklin and Lori Sukla, and then I'll just let you be just totally mesmerized by what these students have done. They've been planning this for a long time, so I'm real proud of all of them.
This is weird. You got that far? Oh boy. This is a 2010 view. Yeah, from beginning.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam President, Board, and Superintendent McLean for allowing us the opportunity to come and present. Just a short bit about our vision for the Integrated Environmental Sustainability Academy is that we provide students with opportunities to construct their own understandings, dealing with economic, social, ecological interdependence in their local, state, national, and global communities through direct experiences in hands-on and minds-on learning. And this year they have spent their time working on an initiative that they would like to put forth within the school district to get rid of any kind of styrofoam within the district. So without further ado, I'll let them present their presentation they've worked long and hard on.
The mouse is right here, okay? And just click on it.
Foam-Free Federal Way by the Lakota Middle School AESA program. Why styrofoam is bad. When burned or gets wet, styrofoam releases chemicals into the air. Some of the chemicals are polystyrene, benzene, and styrene that can cause side effects over long-term exposure like irritation of the upper respiratory tract, irritation of the eyes, headache, weakness, and cancer. Polystyrene, benzene, and styrene are the main chemicals to make styrofoam, and over long-term exposure may cause cancer. The risk for leukemia and lymphoma can increase. The possibility of genetic damage in white blood cells is enhanced. Though the risk of cancer is low, it is still very serious.
This is a storage room within our school where we store our styrofoam, and the lunch lady said they have to fill that up accordingly to how much they have to use a week, mostly 1 or 2 times, maybe 3. And we took the amount of trays that we use in our school, and we calculated it out to about 51% of the students in our school eat lunch. So then we took those numbers, got the numbers of students from the other schools, and just pretty much estimated. And the district in a day uses about 2,200, a week 11,500, in a year 411,000. And then we researched, and that one styrofoam tray is about 3 cents. Ms. Tuggle, our principal, tried to contact the district to see if we could get a confirm on that, but didn't get any reply. And then the amount is $125,000 a year. And in Lakota alone, we use 372 a day, 1,900. In a year, we use 66,888 in 1 year amount of trays. We also calculated the trays are 10 by 8 inches, and within the district, the amount of trays that we use can stretch 65 miles. It's from Tacoma to Everett using the highways, and we still have about 14 miles left in just 1 year. And our custodian, Mr. Kungdirt, we asked him how long he's been here, if styrofoam's been here before. He said he worked there about 25 years, and styrofoam was actually before he started. And with that amount of styrofoam, we can go from here currently where we are standing and sitting, all the way down to Los Angeles. With that 25 years, it still has traces spare. And why styrofoam is bad for the environment. It stays and never decomposes, never breaks down, always stays in our landfill for how long that we know of. It harms the wildlife and near the dumping sites and wherever trash has been left. And the ozone layer and within the atmosphere, usage of processing and creating the styrofoam trays with those 3 main chemicals that Gavin said about can harm their ozone layer. And then within the country, we use about 273 million, almost 274 million pounds of styrofoam are thrown away in the landfill per year. And what we used to do with the styrofoam after we eat, we just tossed it in the garbage. And we did, which is almost a challenge, we took the styrofoam, instead of just throwing it away, we would stack them to conserve space. And instead of having 3 to 4 trucks come a month to pick up all the styrofoam and garbage, we took it down to 1 truck a month from stacking it. And Ms. Tuggle tried to contact the district to see how much money it would cost for each truck to come, how much we're actually saving, and no response or release of the cost. We can use sugarcane trays instead of the styrofoam that we're using, which are decomposable. And we can also use plastic trays, reusable, paper boats, which we do have a little bit in the cafeteria snack bar, but very minimum use. And plastic trays, plastic baskets, that we can also use. Paper boats are 5 cents for each one. They can compose. We can compost them from our progress at Lakota Garden. We can not, we can't use them, which is one of the cons. And sugarcane trays are 8 cents a tray. We can also compost them from the Lakota Garden that we are making progress on. And the plastic trays are $3.60 for 1 tray. They're reusable and washable. The plastic baskets are one of the other alternate ones. 30 cents a basket. They're reusable and washable, and you only have to buy once. And the current styrofoam trays that we use now are only 3 cents a tray, 1 use, and you have to buy it multiple times.
Primary recommendations are plastic trays and plastic baskets. Plastic trays are $2.59 per tray, and plastic baskets are 30 cents per tray. Both are reusable and washable, and they're a one-time cost. Secondary recommendations: Foam-Free Fridays, reduces waste. Pilot program using sugarcane trays, joining and purchasing Alliance, and compostable. These are some quotes from our teachers at Lakota Middle School. Mr. Howard, it doesn't seem responsible for a school to use it. Ms. Fortunato, don't compostable trays do the same job? Ms. Springer, that sounds dangerous. I want to switch to paper. Ms. Young, not surprised about how bad it is for your health. Ms. Christopherson, I have an allergic reaction to that stuff. Mr. O'Flaherty, why don't we use biodegradable trays?
This is the students in the 8th grade and 7th grade making the puppets, and it took around 2 to 3 weeks to make them. And this is them building the castle that's in the 8th grade hall, and it took like 2 months to make it, and all the styrofoam we used we collected over 1 week, and and then this is the finished castle. If they can do it, so can we. These are some places that switched from a different thing
but before they use that, they use styrofoam. In some public school districts that changed: New York, Dallas, Miami, Chicago, and Los Angeles. This is our 7th and 8th grade AISA classes. Thank you to custodian, administration, Miss Sukla, Miss Conklin, Molly Horan, Adam Pasder, Georgette Becara, and the teachers we interviewed. It's bibliography and thank you for your time.
I'm not sure if you have any questions for the students or not, but I would like to introduce them since I neglected to do that. So our brave students that came up to present, which is very amazing: Gavin Wilson, Chloe Poole, Mark Wright, Riley Rollins, and Jaslyn Tapia. So thank you. They would so gladly take any questions if you have any for them. They've worked from, I think, November onward, staying after school to build the castle. The puppets are props that we have taken to presentations that you can wear them, as you can see on that last photo. You just put them on, and they're really great to, give some, have some questions asked and whatnot. They're made out of all recyclable material as well. So.
Well, I just want to thank you for all your work and also the creativity. I was like, whoa, those are pretty cool. So your suggestion would be to start big or to start small? Would you suggest a pilot, or would you suggest that we throw everything out and start brand new based on what you've explored?
I would suggest a pilot to see what those other options would offer and how they would work, and then if those don't work, maybe switch to one of our other alternate options if the first one doesn't work, and then so on.
So your top choices were the sugarcane and the
plastic trays.
Okay, the plastic trays.
Along with
baskets.
The baskets, okay.
And paper boats.
Okay, thank you.
Did you explore the use of styrofoam in other areas of the school or district, or was it just the cafeteria? I see some pipe, for instance, down there.
We only explored the use of styrofoam in the school cafeteria.
Great start. Any further questions?
No, I just appreciate all the efforts, and I definitely think it's something that the board should talk about, and we'll discuss, and then we'll get back to you with some kind of decision.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Madam President, Mr. Blas over here. May I interrupt the agenda for just a second? Our award recipient, Joshua Dawson, and his mother showed up.
Oh,
and
great.
They are here. And I was wondering if they can get a picture up front, and I've got a certificate for him.
And why don't you read that again?
I don't have it.
Okay.
I gave it to the principal to take, but
Come up and present it.
you want me to?
Yeah.
Well, just to remind you that this is Joshua Dawson.
Thank you.
Joshua, yes.
Pleasure.
To remind you that Joshua was a Gates Millennium Scholar, and this is a scholarship that pays for every year, for everything, all the way up to a doctorate. It's just an amazing achievement for an amazing young man, and I ask you to get his autograph now because he's bound to be our next president. So, Josh, I'm going to give you this certificate and congratulate you and have you go up and take a picture with everybody. And I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, amazing.
Mom, are you all
Congratulations, Joshua.
Before we move on the agenda, one of the things we will shortly come to is public comments. And in order to make a comment, you need to fill out one of these blue sheets that are over on the table. I have 2 so far. And 1 more coming, I hear. Thank you. We're now up to 5. Great. The next item that we're moving to is a decision that the board needs to make on who will be the next new school board member to fill the replacement that we currently have, or the vacancy that we currently have. And I'd like to begin by introducing those candidates who interviewed with us last week. We had an amazing group of people, and it was really an exciting time, and it's a very difficult decision, so we'll see how it comes out. Tanea Lanning, if you could stand. Richard Champion, if you could stand. Hiroshi Eto. Shelley Coe, I didn't see Shelley. And Jeremy Kuko. Thank you so much for coming and participating, and you were all excellent. You know, maybe it'd be better if 4 of you came up here. No. But again, thank you so much. We'll now proceed with making our decision. Okay, what we're going to do in order to complete this process is we're going to first discuss the process. Each board member can talk about how they viewed it, what they heard, and then at some point someone will make a motion and we will debate one nominee. If that person gets a majority, that person will be the board member. If that person doesn't get the majority, we will go to another motion and have a new nominee. So that's where we are, and we will begin by discussion. Who would like to begin?
I'll just say that I appreciated the 5 members that interviewed, and each of them came to the panel with a perspective and an area of expertise that really kind of showed and shined. And it was really a conversation and a thought process in my mind to think about what currently and who currently sits on the board and the skill sets that each of us have here, and kind of those skill sets and those kind of transferable skills that we heard from our candidates that really would help us moving forward as a board, and also moving the district work forward. So again, I just want to reiterate, Carol, the thanks to anyone who takes the time to step up and to volunteer. And it is not a job that's highly paid, but a job that really is for the greater good, and that's usually why most people do it. And clearly that was evident in all 5 members who presented. And so I'll just see if any other board members have any other things they'd like to share.
I'd actually like to reiterate as well that all 5 of you coming forward, and being present to go through this process. I too see that there is value in each one of you that fits differently. And I think that that's part of what I have mulled over the last week, is based on the need on the board and what we currently have and what will fit the board the best from all perspectives. And so that's kind of how I made my decision, or picked where I wanted to go, was based on that elimination too. It was not an easy process. I can see all 5 of you fitting in different components in different categories. And so one other thing I want to say is this is an appointment that lasts less than a year from now when you would apply for it. So if it's something that if you don't get it and you're still interested, next May, put your name on the ballot and run for it, because it'll be replaced in November next year. So don't take this as a negative. I think we also share that there are some things that the board are looking at for community involvement, and you'll definitely, for me, be on that short list of individuals that we will turn to look for to be involved in other ways in the district.
Yeah, it's been a good process. I want to commend the board for how we've moved forward with it. Yeah, there's been change going on, but it hasn't been chaotic. It's been, it's been one of those things. The process was laid out. We've walked this process, and like the other board members have said, I appreciate every one of you that have stepped up. The initial 12, then down to 5, to put your name out there, to run through the gauntlet if you choose, just with the questions and everything. I thought the questions were great, and they did, like Director Wilson kind of touched on. There's different strengths that different ones of you had, and it was just so good to see how much you care and how you want to serve. For me, it's I think one of the things I was looking at, even in between the questions and what was asked, is who is it that I really feel right now could step onto the board. I think everybody could at some component, but who could do really the best in stepping in and being a cooperative force, moving forward with different things. Also, just looking at that person's skill set, like Director McAnally touched on, just where's the board going right now, and who would really be able to step in right away and bring their skills to bear, just with the development and as we're moving forward as a board. And so that was evident in many different answers. And like I said, just thank you everyone for coming out and really pouring your heart out there. You could tell everybody was passionate there. It was very clear that everybody really is deeply loves Federal Way Schools and wants to see what's best for kids, for our teachers, for our staff, for our district. And so thank you again for all that you did.
I would just add my comments that I was very impressed with the homework that many of you had done on some of the emerging and continuing issues, not only in the Federal Way School District, but nationally as well. They're becoming increasingly complex, and something that takes a lot of research and reading and thinking about to determine how best to see these fitting into a local school district, because all school districts are different. And so how do we make what's being imposed on us work in Federal Way in the best way for our students? And I felt you all did an excellent job. I thought the discussion of the community and the discussion of your skills was very important, and it's with that also that I made my decision, or at least my first decision. We'll see how this goes. Does anyone have a motion to make?
Madam President, I move to appoint Hiroshi Ito as the new director of District 5.
Moved. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I thought Mr. Ito brought actually a great skill set of just his development with different programs that he's worked with, his vision for systems and that kind of stuff. And for me, I thought that was some of the stuff I really appreciated. I also think he's a great communicator and really did a good job, I thought, presenting what he brought that night. And so I appreciate too the fact that he's someone that's come in our community and really wanting to get involved, has some extra time, as looking, this is his opportunity to really step in. So that was one thing that stood out for me when I heard him, one of the candidates that spoke.
I would say that clearly, as I said, there was incredible strength, and The one thing that I was really looking for was experience and conversations around long-range planning and strategic planning and two-way communication and how important that is as we move forward, and the ability to negotiate and find middle ground where folks don't always agree on issues, that it's not always about, it's agreeing to disagree and trying to find a middle ground that we all can build off of. I would also say that I heard one size doesn't fit all, and we know we have an incredibly diverse district, and we need to have representation of that diversity on the board as well, and that was critically important to me. And we have such diverse communities in our schools and in our Federal Way community that we need to make sure that we've got open lines of communication and that we really create that. And the other piece was the focus on workforce development and CTE, which we know is, as we think about college to cradle and career, is something we need to think about again, as one size does not fit all, and we need to open up options and opportunities for all.
I came to this by having a very difficult time looking at each candidate and thinking about what the strength was, as the others have said. And I am also very concerned that we really do some good, strong strategic planning in this district, and that we really look at how we implement and have accountability both with our programs and with our community. And so that made it even more difficult because everybody had one of those. But I too would support Mr. Eto for this position.
So I reiterate what Director Wilson stated. I campaigned on CTE, and I believe wholeheartedly in that, and that's something that I think as a district we need to look at long and hard. I also like that all four of us currently sitting on this board have students, whether they be children or grandchildren in the district. You've had your children go through the district, and I think sometimes there's a value that goes with that, and what you've seen within the past, we're entrenched in it currently today. So when I first started this process, I thought it was really important that we have another member that has someone in the district. But as I thought about it, I thought it was important to know how things were in the past and how did things look in the past. Not that we want to go backwards, but I think there are things that probably worked in the past that we may need to revisit and look at and have an understanding about. So based on those two components, that's what, and also your civil engineering background and where that piece comes in. As a PMP, I also understood and can relate to a lot of things that you stated. So being able to step in and have a working relationship from the get-go was also important to me. So.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Eto. You want to stand so people can see again who you are? He will be sworn in at the next meeting and will sit as a member of the board starting on the 17th. But we will be in contact, or 24th. We will be in contact very shortly. There's a lot to learn. And thanks again to all the rest of you who participated, because it was a very worthwhile process. We had to do a lot of thinking about what we saw the future needs to be, and I think we have someone that can help us with that. So congratulations. Okay, moving on. We're moving on to public comments. I'm going to confer just quickly. For anyone who wants to speak on the budget, as you'll note in this agenda, we will recess for an official public hearing, and if you would choose to speak at that time, we will take public comment at that time. So, Charlie.
That's where I want to be.
Okay, figured. Michael Scuderi. No, you're not. You're SBG. Standard-based grading. What else? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I always have problems with this one, this mouse. There we go. Okay. Well, good evening, board members. Superintendent McLean. It sounds kind of weird saying that, but we're here. I'm here once again to talk about deficiencies with standards-based grading. The bottom line of my presentation is that Federal Way School District has been using erroneous data to promote standards-based grading, and the board should consider a change in the current policy and direct the superintendent to revise the grading system. I'm part of the grading committee, but what I'm talking about is outside of the purview of the grading committee as defined by the ESC staff, so that's why I'm here tonight. In researching the use of standards-based grading, we found that the schools identified by the school district, by Federal Way School District, as examples for standards-based grading are not really implementing it. In fact, a review by one of the grading committee members identified only 2 districts with a positive rating. As you see here, here's the list of the 27 schools. 22 were looked at. 2, Adams 5-star School and Quakertown Community School District were identified as positive in use of standards-based grading. So let's look at Adams 5-star Public Schools. Standards-based grading was implemented in 2013. The school doesn't use standards-based grading. It uses something called standards reference grading at the high school level, which means that assessment scores are not tied to individual standards. And here's an example from the syllabus. You can see it's not standards, it's basically groups of standards, which is a little different in terms of how you do grades. Quakertown is even more interesting. They've used standards-based grading since 2004 elementary, in the secondary since 2009. Their test scores have actually gone down. And more importantly, the class of 2012 and 2013 were surveyed, and they revealed a widespread opinion among students that the high school's grading system had left them ill-equipped for higher education, and they are using standards-based grading. Quakertown was so pleased with this, they decided to return to the traditional grading system for high school and middle schools in 2014-15 school year. See there? Which is grading system. We also talked with the Edmonds School District, which is not on the list. And I encourage you to read the email excerpt that we have here. But the important thing is that they are not looking at implementing standards-based grading. Instead, they're looking at, first of all, looking at how to integrate the Common Core standards to their curriculum, which we think is more important. So in summary, Federal Way Public School District has continuously presented information on the benefits of the SBG. They provided names of schools which are happily, on several occasions, they have provided names of school districts on several occasions that are happily using SBG, including Quakertown. However, the reality is none of these school districts are using true SBG, and many are encountering problems. Quakertown, as we said before, they're displeased with it and they've changed. And let's go on to recommendations. I recommend that the board direct the superintendent to revise the grading system. We should not try to be first with an untried grading policy. We should be using a system we should not be using a system that is not working. Recommendation 2, let's place emphasis on aligning our curriculum with Common Core standards. How can teachers provide effective instruction if they do not have a curriculum tied to Common Core standards? And the third recommendation is the superintendent and/or the assessment director should participate in a public forum where they directly answer questions from the public at large concerning SBG. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
When you say recommendation, you're on the grading committee, correct?
Correct.
So is this a recommendation to the grading committee?
No, according to the rules that were defined by the ESC staff, they said we were supposed to remain within the guidelines of the current policy 2420P.
I see.
So this is outside of that.
Okay.
I'm basically saying you need to get rid of the system.
It was defined by the policy governance and by the outline when you set up a committee that reports to the superintendent. It's outlined in what the reporting is. So I kind of had a question in addition to that. You said we. Who is we?
My wife and I. And
Thank you very much. I just wondered if you were representing individual or you were representing a group outside of the grading committee. I just was, thank you.
What it is basically is we asked the ESC staff to help us do research. They declined, saying they didn't want to have the appearance of bias, so we had to go out and do our own research on SBG.
Okay.
Okay, so actually, to the ESC staff, are there any of you that would like to speak to this, or is it something that we have our next grading meeting? Can we bring this up in discussion next week and talk about this as a committee as a whole? And what are your thoughts or input at this point from what Scuderi has shared?
Can I?
Yeah, I don't think it's within the guidance of what the
point of order
advisory.
to the president right now. I think we're off the agenda. This is not a question and answer time for the board. This is public comment, and we have veered way
That's
off.
fine. Then I'll come back to my comments and do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just was confused a little bit.
That's okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with this name. Is it Gracie? Ah. It's Grace. It's Grace. Okay. I see. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you
sorry
so much. No, you shouldn't be sorry. There are some names I can't pronounce. My name is Grace Bwao. Okay. Actually, I'm here because today you got me excited. And they say if I go back home without saying these words, that would be unfair. First, I'll begin by saying I'm proud of FWHS. This is where my children go. I have 4 children. One is at Miller Lake, 2 at Sequoia Middle School, and my baby, maybe she's gonna go back to Norman Center. First, I would say that all your effort, I've seen it today. We have these questions all the time. Where is the success? The success is what you've been doing here. When you see people not believing what's happening, that's the success we've seen today. I want to thank, that's why I even wrote that, to thank the following people. First, the staff of Miller Lake, but I'll mention the special teacher, Mr. Clement. He's really doing so well with my daughter. I'll thank the staff of Sequoia Middle School, and I'll start with Dave over there. He started with my daughter. My daughter is going to high school now. It is all the love we see in the schools that is going to make us, the parents and the children, succeed. So thank you so much. I would like to tell you that FWHS is unique. I've got a chance to go to different forums. When they say, we don't have these, I'm like, I see the difference. You may not see it, but when people speak out, we see the difference. I would like to thank Claire Wilson. You don't know how she speaks about FWHS. Every time she meets someone and somebody says, I'm from FWHS, you know what she say? Have you seen Trey Small? That has made a big change in our lives as parents. As I'm speaking now, I'm a parent leader with FWHS School District, and I'm so proud of Trey Small. You should wave to the board. She has empowered us as parents. I can speak, I can really do what it takes to support my children at their school. So that is what we call achievement. So if we are involved, you'll see more awards coming in, you will see more children coming over here, you will see a lot happening. We thank you so much. I'm speaking behind me, there's so many parents who may not be here, but they're so thankful. We thank you. Keep the commitment, the inspiration words, and keep your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Angela Worcester.
So thanks for letting me speak tonight. I first of all wanted to come because I was very interested in seeing your selection for the school board candidate. And like I wrote to you last night, all of the candidates had qualities, and I hope that they will stay actively involved and help some of us who are directed towards one path or another we need help in many areas. Our school district is huge, and we need a lot of help in many ways, and I was so heartened to see so many individuals step up to do a very difficult job. The second reason I'm here, just to mention, I've talked to some of you in person, or I've sent emails in the past. I am still very concerned about communication and would like to be part of the solution. I have heard people asking for open forums, and I would like to ask if the district or the board could clarify for us what the opportunities are for parents and community members to have dialogue with board members and with decision makers, what those opportunities might be. Perhaps I just don't know what they are. How do I find them? And the third point, I'd like to ask for a plan about grading. I was a little bit disappointed that we got this far, and I haven't heard any proposals for next year. I had been hoping that the advisory committee would be able to come up with a form of proposal. The work study back in October identified some consistent themes through all the groups. That included the priority matrix, which was revised, as well as options for granularity and weighting and communication. I had expected to see some form of pilot program to try out different forms of weighting or to have some kind of proposal for granularity. For me personally, the grade of 3 doesn't communicate to me what I need to know as a parent. I can't see if they're almost on failing or if they just didn't put in the extra effort that day to reference 5 references as opposed to just 3. The 3 is very hard to read, to use as a communication tool from my perspective as a parent. So I'm asking if there's a way for the district to report to us what the plan is for grading. I've been keeping up on the minutes, and it just doesn't seem like there's a timeline or a reason why something shouldn't be tried at this time. We want what's best for all the children, not just my child in the class. And I hope that there would be a plan soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I think there is one meeting coming up, and then to both of the people inquiring about that, I would hope that we could have a report shortly after that meeting of where the committee is. Laura Sarver?
Good evening, Superintendent McLean, Deputy Superintendent Davidson, and board members. My name is Laura Sarver, and I am a teacher at Lake Dolph Elementary and Enterprise Elementary. I was happy to read the budget proposal and see that so many things are being reinstated. So I have my little prop here. I have my Swiss cheese with all the holes, and I was happy to learn that so many of those holes are being filled. But as you notice, there's a big gaping one here that I just want to talk about a minute. And that was that I did not see the reinstatement of secondary librarians for our students and staff. Perhaps some of you sitting here tonight may not be aware that for several years, and I think it's been about 7 now, that all of our middle schools and high schools have had only a .2 librarian at their schools. 10 secondary schools up until this past December have had this arrangement. Then in December, our North End librarian left seeking greener pastures. She is delighted to be a full-time librarian at a neighboring school district. Last night I had the pleasure of hosting a retirement dinner celebration for the South End secondary librarian, who has had 5 schools. I am concerned, since the North End librarian's position has been posted since December and still not filled, that the South End will see the same thing, and that would be 10 schools, unfortunately, without a position filled. But I'm not here to dwell on that. I wish to give you a little insight on a full-time librarian that I spoke to in a neighboring district. And I just want to read a little bit from her email of what an amazing place she has. I actually stepped in her library last week and I go, wow. And she wrote this, I quote, "Over the course of a year, I worked to support the academic and personal interests of students by providing relevant resources for research and reading. Throughout the year, I collaborate with teachers to integrate the instruction of information literacy with classroom curriculum. I provide targeted instruction to 9th grade students during the first 2 weeks of school to help equip them with the skills and tools necessary to be a successful student, thinker, creator, and producer of information. Because of my flexible schedule, I am able to work with teachers throughout the day on their schedule to create learning experiences that are research-driven, create research guides that support independent practice on research, scaffold research projects so that all students can succeed, suggest technology tools to enhance instruction and learning. Throughout the day, a person could stop in her library and they might see classes working on a PowerPoint presentation, classes constructing videos, classes collaborating through Google Docs, students working independently, students reading in our reading area, groups of students working together on a project. Students may be studying for their next exam or finishing research papers. No matter what is going on, a person stopping by will see their library staff engaged with teachers, classes, and independent students, helping independent students locate resources, utilize technology tools, research, problem solve, create, etc. Because she is full-time, she knows her staff and all her students. In any case, a full-time librarian in this district is key to the digital shift of all libraries and schools are experiencing. I wish us to consider that so that we are no longer this gaping hole, but we have become this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I have 2 papers just I'd like to pass out
Sure.
to read at your pleasure. Thank you.
Sure. We will now move to Superintendent Comments. Sally McLean.
So my comments this evening are really focused around the significant activities that occur at the end of the year. At last week's Chamber Luncheon, President Jack Birmingham kind of started me thinking about graduation by giving a nod to the strong partnership that exists between Federal Way Public Schools and Highline Community College. One of the partnerships that the school district enjoys with Highline Community College is a program called Gateway to College, which provides another opportunity for students to graduate. This year's graduating class celebrated their success yesterday. This Friday, our Employment and Transition Program, which serves our students through the age of 21, will celebrate their graduation during the middle of the day on Friday. And we will have our virtual graduation of our Internet Academy students on Friday evening. That will be capped off by the culmination of on Saturday, June 14th, the final 6 groups of our 12th graders will walk across the stage, prepared for the next steps in their life's journey. And while we celebrate the culmination of this journey for our graduating students and winding down a school year, it's important to remember that teaching and learning still occurs for our students across the summer, and that we're gearing up for one of the largest summer schools offerings that the district's had the opportunity to host since the loss of I-728 funding. So that is one of the holes in the Swiss cheese that's been filled with the legislature moving forward with funding. I think it's always staggering to realize that we serve over 3,000 students in these larger summer school programs, which is a larger number of students that more than 200 school districts in the state serve on a day-to-day basis. So our summer school is extensive and rich, and I look forward to that opportunity as we wind down this year and start up our summer school. So that concludes my comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. School board comments. Who would like to begin? Sure.
Okay, well, I just had a couple things I wanted to add on to, I guess, the theme of the library and reading, but the fact is that summer reading and the Let's Read campaign is happening, and that when school is out, it doesn't mean that learning should stop. And so I would love to just have any parent that has children or grandparent or aunt and uncle or anyone who has a significant child in their life to keep your eyes open for Let's Read campaign material, and also for your summer food sites where there also will be reading going on in order to retain learning throughout the summer, so kids are ready to come back fresh and ready to go in the fall. Also want to make sure people know the Fred buses will be around again, so the green buses that will also have summer meals and also math and literacy activities will be visiting sites, and I know that the schedule is out and posted, I believe, on the district website, because I know it was also out in social media. And the only other thing I would say is this week I had an opportunity as the legislative liaison in the district to, on the board, to entertained 2 legislators from the 33rd District in Federal Way, Mia Gregerson and Tina Orwell, who reached out to find out a little bit more because of, at least with Mia, her newness to the area and to schools and to the whole legislative scene, kind of what was going on, and had the really opportunity to show them some great things in Federal Way. They had some very specific things they'd asked to look at, and we started at Sunnycrest with the dual language immersion program there, and really looking at what we're doing with our diverse communities, especially our second language, and our ELL, DLL students, and spent time with Rudy Baca there talking about the program, and had the PTA president, Corlette Bird, join us, and interestingly found out that even PTA, when they go into classrooms, in the Spanish-speaking classrooms, have to speak Spanish, that English is not allowed. So parents themselves have also gained second language skill if they go to Sunnycrest. We then went to Technology Access Foundation, where they were interested in looking a little more into project-based learning and community partnerships, and how that the public-private partnership works in our district. And at the time, there were students out on the field replicating DNA and RNA, and seniors had them all out there, and they were breaking down DNA strands into RNA strands and creating meat and all kinds of different things with their bodies and the strands of RNA. Clearly a project-based opportunity for freshmen put on by the senior class. We then went to Totem, where they were very interested in AVID, and because AVID was, and Totem was just identified as a demonstration school, it was really nice to stop in and have Principal Baker stop and spend quite a bit of time explaining AVID and how important that is. And Tina Orwell is very much a supporter and was involved from the very beginning when AVID came into the district. And then the last place we went was to Valhalla Elementary, where they were interested in looking at meaningful family engagement, and were greeted by the family liaison and 20-odd parents in the parent room, sharing the wonderful things that our district does related to meaningful involvement and how families are engaged in their kids' world. And they never left the parent room, because there was so much rich conversation and so many questions they had about what they could do as legislators, that students stayed upstairs and staff stayed upstairs, and they stayed in with those 20-odd parents for the hour that they were there. So we have more visits coming up, and they truly are interested in partnering and helping us as a school district, and I was honored to be able to take them and introduce them to some wonderful parents and wonderful staff in those schools. So thank you.
So we wrapped up the Board of Education recognition nights at the 7 middle schools, and I actually attended all 7 of those. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to connect, not only to recognize our students and our parents and staff and volunteers, but also it's a way, at the last one we actually brought up some different opportunities. I have shared before that I believe that transitions from 5th grade to 6th grade and from 8th grade to 9th grade is something we need to evaluate. And I think we need to take those opportunities to share and make sure that we're communicating to parents and students what their opportunities are. And so we need to take and figure out as a board ways to do that within the community. We actually had some conversations spurred from that, from some students that were there. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we're doing all we can to educate all of our students and all of our parents of all the opportunities that are available in our school district. Mr. Scuderi, I appreciate your comments. And at this point, I guess I will turn to the members of the administration who are part of that committee and ask if what your feelings are, or if you have any comments about Mr. Scuderi's comments, and just, like, why can I not ask that either? I thought, can I not do it?
I think you should ask the superintendent. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Sally.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the original charge of the committee has them meeting through next Thursday,
correct,
which we would expect to see after that meeting recommendations to come forward that we would have an opportunity to discuss and deliberate. So whether that gets scheduled at a future work study or what manner President Gregory and the rest of the board want to address that information, I think we can set up what that opportunity will look like.
So I will share as a member of that committee, part of my concern. What?
Well, let's go ahead.
So we have been a district that has had changes for the last 4 years. And so I'm only one voice in that vote, but I think we need to think long and hard about any large changes that we make around grading for this next year. We're in a process where we have an interim superintendent. We have had many complaints about how often we've changed it. So I'm open to hearing and discussing, but as an individual board member, I'm really concerned that we make any big drastic changes for next year. I would really be concerned. We're in June, it's September. The biggest thing we hear is communication, not only for parents, but for staff and training and all those components that go into that. So it's something that we really need to think long and hard about before we just scrap something and throw it away and have a 5th year where we're starting from another situation with another large change around grading. That's all.
And I would just reiterate the fact that there's a grading advisory, and the purpose of the grading advisory was to provide recommendations to the superintendent, which the board would then take into consideration as well. And to act on information or on information that's not coming from the advisory would be, in my mind, negating the work of the advisory. And so I look forward to getting that report. It's not that there's ever not a time to give input, but what I look for is the work of the advisory that's been working over the last 4 meetings to see what actual recommendations they're putting forward. Because the purpose of the committee was not to halt a grading system, it was to put a yellow light and a pause in while we gathered more information, we began to understand what we didn't understand, clarify what we needed to clarify, and then make a plan to create a communication plan that was going to clearly give people more information than we'd have before. So I myself would like to wait for the recommendation of the board, the advisory.
Danny?
I enjoyed the school board recognition nights as well. I was over at Lakota and over at Sahali. And tonight we had the chance to celebrate some of the amazing people. And those nights are such an extension of that, where you wish you could just replay the tape of all the different stories, and you see the proud parents that are just pouring their lives into their kids, and you see the proud teachers that are pouring their lives into these students, and you see these proud administrators and parent groups and everything that is just coming together and cooperating. And it's just an awesome testament of just the amazing people we have in this community, and the amazing stories that kids with adversity and all kinds of stuff are just doing awesome stuff. And I always come away from those times totally encouraged, and the last few have been no exception to that by any means. I was able to stop by Olympic View, Twin Lakes, Decatur High School, and just see how it was going there. When I was over at Decatur High School, they were having senior sneak day. I want to thank, but what was really cool is I actually had a conversation with one of the administrators there who has just worked on finalizing the master schedule there, and he actually was talking about how, with all the changes, grading system, that kind of stuff, how this next year with Common Core and stuff moving forward, how excited he is with just some of the foundation of moving forward and how to really help teachers get in that groove of really doing that well. We talk about standards, it's really moving to Common Core. That's what we use around here. And it's just cool to see that conversation, what's going on with staff there. It was great seeing what's going on with our elementary schools. This last Saturday, I was down at Lakota Middle School. I want to thank Mrs. Tuggle for opening up her backyard for us back there. And they had the Do or Die, DYE, fun run for all of our elementary school students. 400 kids signed up. Miss Henry from Lake Grove and Mr. Godsif from Green Gables were kind of the two ones that took the charge with it. And they really did. And it was great. Just having a huge turnout, parents, siblings, all that kind of stuff, as kids ran around the big loop there at Lakota, and they had big packets of different colored dye, and And we've seen TJ's done this, I know, for a fundraiser, and and I know Kylo's done it as well. And to see these elementary students, and there was no charge, just bring a white T-shirt and just get hit with the stuff. And my daughter was one of them, you know, getting it in her teeth and her hair and everything, and the kids just loved it. And what was awesome is that it really did what it was intended to do, is really help kids get active. Kids didn't want to stop going around the proverbial treadmill, you know, of just going around and getting hit again and again. And they close it off at the end with all the kids get this big pile of colored dye, and they all throw it up in the air in this big cloud. And I don't think any of that causes cancer or anything like that, but it's just, well, it's just everybody's coughing like, all right, this is great. But fun day, tons of volunteers, tons of people putting in time, great experience for our kids. And it's just another time of just our community coming together on a weekend celebrating, and end of the school year, and it's great. And again, too, I'm looking forward to this Saturday with our graduations. It's going to be a long day, starting early in the morning at the Tacoma Dome, just back to back to back to back, and just another day of just celebrating the amazing students we have here, and just a culmination of a ton of work this last year to help our students, achieve great things. And so, I'm looking forward to the Saturday. Oh, it's probably the highlight of my year of seeing that and just the joy and that stuff that goes into that day. So, looking forward to that, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments. I had the opportunity to attend the graduation at the Gateway program at Highline Community College, and it's a program for kids who are really struggling moving forward in education in our public school system. And there are about 95 students there now, more from Federal Way than from Highline, which is the other district. And it was amazing to see kids who very openly and honestly said they would not have graduated from high school without the program. They didn't fit in the high schools. They didn't fit in anything else they tried. And the maturity level that they had developed was huge, and they spoke to it very openly as to what had happened to them and what the differences were. And it made me think about how important it is in this district and why we're so lucky in this district to have such a variety of opportunities for youth. The critical thing, and Jeffrey McAnally hit on it, and that is we need to communicate to our parents what those opportunities are. And we try. We just have to keep doing it, because there are a lot of opportunities out there that our parents don't know about that would be great for their child, and they need to begin to know at a very young age and begin to explore those. And so I concur with what Jeffrey said about how that's an area of emphasis for us. How do our youth transition meaningfully from 5th to 6th to 8th to 9th, so that they have a continuum of opportunity that really drives them towards a career and or college. And so that was exciting to think about, because that's I think the real opportunity that we have here that we need to just give more strength to. The other thing I have been thinking about, we talk a lot about what we're doing in Federal Way and the overload that we seem to have on everybody. And the struggles that causes. And so we were in a conversation, and I began to write down those things that we are required to implement next year that don't have any money attached, but require extensive work of all of our staff, but particularly our principals and our teachers. We have the Next Gen Science, which you're going to hear about shortly. Common Core is a requirement next year. TPEP, which is the evaluation that was required by the legislature, or the pilot that was started. We're only in our 2nd year of that. And looking at some of the principals' work in that evaluation process, which I think is a powerful process. But they have notebooks on their desks like this that are just the work they're doing in that arena. So you can imagine if you have a school of 600 kids, what that's doing to you. Smarter balanced testing we have next year. We have a new highly capable initiative the legislature passed, which makes major changes in what we're doing there. And we're moving towards Core 24, which is a requirement that all, for graduation, a student have 24 credits, which means we've got to look at structure and how programs are delivered and all kinds of things in our high schools. Now, these are not bad things, but they are not things we independently decided were good for our students. And so part of what our responsibility as a staff and board will be is to how most effectively do this for those that we serve, because one size doesn't always fit all. And the Gateway program that I saw the other day at Highline was a perfect example of that very issue. But I thought it was interesting and thought we need to be thinking about what we've got ahead of us when we think about, well, why don't we do this or why don't we do that? Sometimes we don't have choices, and next year is going to be one of those years with very few choices because of all that's being imposed by the federal and state government. So anyway, that's my whining. You'll hear more. Okay, we are now going to go to the Next Generation Standards presentation, one of our new opportunities.
Good evening again, President Gregory, members of the board, Superintendent McLean. We are here tonight to share with you, as you've just heard a little bit about, another new piece that will be coming to a town called Federal Way soon. Tonight I am joined by our teacher on special assignment for science, K-12, Megan Walker, who this is her first year in this position. She's a former extraordinary science teacher from Todd Beamer High School. She has done an exemplary job of leading a team of teachers, because as you know, it's very important to us that teachers are critical, they are very much involved in the process of helping us to transition to this new set of standards. Similar process to what we used when we developed the transition plan to move to Common Core. We replicated that, improved it to learn from our lessons, and developed a similar transition process to help us make some recommendations and determine how to move to the next generation science standards. So tonight, Megan is going to share with you a little bit about why next gen science standards. They are very exciting. It is a wonderful opportunity for our students to learn science in a very meaningful way. And she's also going to share with you a little bit about that transition plan and then how we plan to actually transition over the next 3 years. Megan Walker.
Hello, thank you. So I wanted to start off by sharing just a little bit about why new science standards. And the quote that I selected comes from the framework document that I'll explain in a moment, but this is the foundation of where the standards came from. And to me, it really exemplifies how more and more in our lives, and I've seen it just over the course of my life, science has become an integral part of our everyday existence. We're asked to make decisions about very complicated scientific issues. And so it's really important that our students are leaving school ready to understand scientific information. We've learned a lot over the last 20 years since we had new national science standards about how children learn science. And so they've used that research to put together these new standards in a way that works more naturally with the way children learn science. So the new vision, there's two pieces on here that I wanted to emphasize. The first one really highlights the integration So in our current standards, we have a lot of separation where we learn about the scientific method and then we learn about the content over here. And what we really want is that over multiple years of school, students are actively engaging in those practices. They're applying the kinds of thinking and categories and ways of understanding the world that scientists and engineers use to solve problems, so that they have a deep understanding of the core ideas. It's not a vocabulary test, it's not a label the diagram quiz, it's can you really understand why this interesting thing is happening because you really understand scientific laws. Then the learning experiences should really be about those fundamental questions. We really want to be addressing kind of the deep questions that we all have to make it a more interesting and productive conversation. So the goal with the Next Gen Science Standards, by the end of 12th grade, students should have enough knowledge of these concepts to engage in public discussions on science-related issues. We know that that's something that happens, that our students are going to need to be participating in. We want students to be critical consumers of scientific information related to their everyday lives. Our students are bombarded with advertisements and opportunities that could improve their lives or could harm their lives, and they need to understand how to read that information. And also to continue to learn about science throughout their lives, because we know that the science that we're teaching in our classrooms today is not going to look the same as the science that our children are dealing with in 20 or 30 years. So they need to be able to continue to learn and continue to develop their understanding. So we want students to appreciate the process and the product of science. So the first step in this development was the development of the framework. There was a grant provided funding by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. It was sponsored by the National Research Council, and there was a team of 18 that included practicing scientists, 2 Nobel laureates, cognitive scientists, science education researchers, and people with expertise in writing standards and policy to put together this framework for K-12 education. They had 4 design teams: life science, physical science, earth and space science, and in one of the new exciting developments, a specific team devoted to engineering and incorporating engineering into our science education. The first draft was released for public comment in 2010. They took that feedback and the final draft was released in July 19th, 2011. This is the document that describes what students should know and be able to do if they have a solid science education by the time they graduate. The guiding principles that created this framework that it's based on is first that children are born investigators, that as children investigate the world around them, they naturally try to understand that world and they come to explanations for their role in it. And as teachers, we need to build on that innate learning and that innate understanding of the world rather than trying to impose a more correct understanding. That we're focusing on core ideas and principles. Not every single topic that is every science teacher's favorite topic is included in these standards, because we need to provide students opportunities to go deep into core understandings, and with the knowledge that if they have those deep understandings, they can generalize it to learn about their specific topics of interest. Understanding develops over time, so the same topics appear in these standards in different grade levels as students progress. They engage in them at a developmentally appropriate, more complex, deep level over time. That science and engineering require both knowledge and practice. That understanding science is not understanding a body of facts. It is understanding a way of understanding the world, a process of reasoning, what counts as evidence, how that evidence is gathered and evaluated to develop those understandings. And that we're connecting to students' interests and experiences. That in order for students to be attracted to science, to see science as a possible career or future or interest for them, we need to be making those explicit connections between what they're learning in class and their lives outside of school and their personal interests. And then finally, promoting equity, that all students in every school across the country deserve access to high quality science education. And that means they need teachers who know how to teach their science, that have access to the equipment and facilities that will get them to that next level. So these are the founding guiding principles that the entire framework is based on. The writers identified 3 dimensions of science learning. So dimension 1 is the science and engineering practices. So some of these look familiar to inquiry. You'll see asking questions, designing experiments, but also developing and using models and engaging in argument from evidence. So they really tried to represent the breadth and scope of what scientists and engineers do in their careers as on their day-to-day lives. Dimension 2 is those disciplinary core ideas, and those are broken down into pretty traditional dimensions. We have physical science, life science, earth and space science, and then engineering. And then those big ideas are broken down further into their component ideas. Again, notice that engineering has been included at this level as equal with the other disciplines of science, which is an exciting development with these standards. Dimension 3 is the cross-cutting concepts, and these are the things that go across all of those disciplines that all scientists use in the way that they think about learning. All scientists and engineers look for patterns. All scientists are interested in and study cause and effect. So these are understandings that will help students see the connection between all the different ideas that they're learning. The big exciting switch for these standards compared to what we had before is the integration, that we see science instruction as three-dimensional, where the content is woven together with the practice and organized using those cross-cutting concepts. So this document, the framework document, was used to develop the standards. And the standards were put together, a team led by the organization Achieve, and there were 2 public drafts released for comment. There were significant changes made based on the feedback that they received from educators throughout the country. We hosted one of those feedback sessions in Federal Way. My predecessor, Sharon Norton, led that work. And the final draft was released last year. Washington State adopted these standards on October 1st of this year, and there's a 4-year transition plan through the state of Washington that starts this year, that we're in the middle of. So, just to kind of show you how the standards work, each standard includes each of the components of the strands. So here's an example of a 3rd grade physical science standard. Make observations and/or measurements of an object's motion to provide evidence that a pattern can be used to predict future motion. So you can see there's a practice in there, making observations and measurements and providing evidence. There's a disciplinary core idea about motion and that motion is predictable and measurable. And there's a cross-cutting concept about identifying patterns and that you can use patterns that you see to make predictions about the future. So instead of having your process standards over here where you get your scientific method unit and then never do another experiment, it's intricately woven together so that instruction has to include using the practices to learn the content. That's the thing that's most exciting for me about these standards, is that you have to have students doing science in order to meet the standard. In our district, our transition team was about 30 people. It varied a little bit between the 3 meeting sessions that we had. We met for over 3 school days. The first day was mostly about learning about the standards and the structure of the standards, and then in our subsequent 2 meetings, we really dug apart on what we wanted our transition to look like. We had 4 grade band teams, so we were divided into a K2 team, 3-5 team, 6-8 middle school team, and a 9-12 high school team. Each team had a mix of teachers, instructional coaches, TOSAs, and there were also representatives on each team from Student Support Services and ELL, because we wanted to embed supports for all of our students into the plan from the beginning, rather than tagging it on at the end. So if you can see, the last 2 pages of your packet really show the outline of the actual plan itself. So there's some work that's done at a district level to kind of streamline and organize our science. In the elementary school, it's a little bit different at each level. So overall, we want to start using some next-gen performance expectations next year. Teachers really wanted to get started with this a little bit at a time so that they had some time to try things out, see what works, improve, and build rather than switching everything over at once. We're completely transitioned by the end of the 2016-2017 school year, which is in line with the state's transition plan. The spring of 2017 is the earliest that we may have a new science test that's aligned to the next-gen science standards. We're including resources and professional development focused on those practices and really expanding our students' access to doing science, meaningful science in their classrooms. Some of those different details in elementary, each grade level will get 1 new unit per year so that by the end of the 3-year transition, they're using all units based on next-gen science standards. We're going to be adapting our current materials to better fit the needs of the next-gen standards. In the middle school, because most of our schools have life science and then earth and space and then physical, each grade level will get a chunk of new standards. So one of their topics, for example, ecosystems in the life science course, will switch over to the next generation. There's going to be a team of teachers coming in to put together some support materials for teachers around that. In high school, some of our courses are going to be changing to align to the next gen. So next year, all of our general science courses, not the AP and IB, but the general science courses will get one set of new science standards next year so that they can experiment and try them out and see how they work and how they work in assessment with students. The following year, the 9th grade science course, whatever that is at the high school, some schools it's life, some schools it's physical, we'll switch over to next gen, and then in our last year, we'll switch over to 10th and 11th grade. So that's the bird's eye view, and you have a few more details in here. The last thing that I wanted to share was just this diagram, and I wanted to share this because it shows that this is not something that's completely different. This dovetails beautifully with what we're already doing with Common Core. This diagram shows overlap with the practices asked for in the math and ELA Common Core, and you can see that there's a lot of opportunity for students to see the same thing in multiple contexts to really build and support their understanding. Any questions?
Questions? Wow.
So as I said, an amazing job.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention, as Megan stated, the teachers that have been involved. We have to tip our hats to these 30 teachers who gave up time out of their classrooms to come, as did the Common Core teams, as did the Priority Standard teams. We are very fortunate to have a teaching force in this district who works for the betterment of all students and all teachers, and Megan did a stellar job of leading that. And they really had to, going back to what President Gregory said a few moments ago, they really had to grapple with all the pieces on the proverbial plate. And they had to really ask some tough questions. What's reasonable? What's realistic? What can we do without the straw breaking the camel's back? And what makes sense for our students? And the team was so thoughtful and spent a great deal of time with Megan's leadership. I also want to recognize the other members of the TFL team. We don't just work in isolation and just do math and science and ELA. All of the team came and supported science. We all work together every week to develop this whole process, to put it together, to support the work. So I have to recognize the entire TFL team. And what they came out with is, we need to go slow. Just like President Gregory said, we can't do this all at once to our teachers. They have a lot that they're juggling right now. So the teachers, as I said, made some very strategic plans. These plans were then brought to our leadership team, Mr. Blauser, Ms. Black, and other members of our team. Megan brought in members of her team to present this to us and said, here's our idea. And we believed it made the most sense as well. So this summer, Megan will be bringing together some teachers to help write some of those units, because just like with Common Core, there's not a lot out there to go by. We have a beautiful science center. A beautiful science center that's houses many materials that aren't necessarily always used. And this, you'll love this, Superintendent McLean, this fiscally responsible young lady here has decided to, with her team, to take some of those materials and repurpose them. And so they're going to be building a kit, which is essentially a curriculum, for each elementary level that will be piloted, thank you to Sherwood Forest. Sherwood Forest can actually pilot those for us in the fall to make sure we work all the bugs out. And then they'll be rolled out to all of the elementary schools next year. So each grade level will just bring on one new piece of content. So it's not horribly overwhelming. We want to give those teachers some professional learning around those, help them to understand how the next gen science standards are different, and then that would also move up through middle and high school. So we are trying to be very strategic, very purposeful in this implementation, to not, as I said, break the camel's back, but also to give our students access to these incredible standards, which they're great. They're really powerful standards, as Megan showed you. The way that they are integrated and developed together really make a lot of sense for our students' learning. So I want to tip our hat to this team, to our staff, and what kinds of questions can we answer for you?
So just clarify for me. That was the question I was going to ask. Are we piloting this? Are we doing it district-wide? Are we going to pilot at K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12? Are we completely rolling it out? I mean, so you mentioned Sherwood Forest is going to start something in the fall. What are we doing with 6-8 and 9-12?
So it's with 9-12, the teachers are only getting a small bit of standards, so each teacher can kind of decide how they want to deal with that. It'll just be part of their regular standard courses. With the 6-8, because those teachers are content area experts, they felt like if they had kind of a framework to work with and some resources and suggested resources, that they could go from there. So there's going to be a team of middle school teachers coming together this summer to put that together for each of those 3 grade levels. For the elementary, because those teachers are not content area experts necessarily in science, we're doing more of a packaged product for them. So we're going to put it together. It's going to include a lot of the GLAD strategies that our elementary schools are using that are going to be woven into the units. The teachers at elementary we decided to focus on one practice for each year. In the elementary level, they're focusing on argumentation for the first year specifically because it's such a high leverage for all 3 of those areas. And then we're going to pilot those units at Sherwood Forest in the fall, make any changes that we need to make, collect samples of student work, hopefully videos of teachers teaching that other teachers can use, and then roll it out district-wide.
So to answer your question, Director Gregory, we're going to do a small chunk each year. So by the end of the 3rd year, we will fully have transitioned to all the new standards. So next year we'll have a large share of the old standards plus a little bit of new ones. Year 2, we'll have more of the new ones, but still some of the old ones. By year 3, we'll be all in with the new standards. So it's a gradual phase-in process, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I just want to say this is very impressive. And of course, I am very impressed with your implementation strategies. I think you're really thinking about what's realistic. And while I know that these will be great for kids, they've got to be done right. And this will give us the opportunity to do them right along with everything else. But I appreciate it. I think this is an excellent presentation. And I'm very impressed with the implementation strategies. Thank you. Any further? Okay. Thank you very much. We are now going to recess our board meeting to go to an official public hearing on the budget. This does not mean that we will be adopting the budget tonight, that this is the first public look at the 2014-2015 budget. And so we will also take public comment after the presentation.
President Gregory, may I?
So are we recessing right now for a public meeting?
Yes, we are in recess. Thank you.
At the last board meeting, I had the opportunity to roll out the superintendent's recommendation, which, as you'll recall, focused on the general fund. This evening, I'd like to introduce the Director of Business Services, Jerry Carlson. Ms. Carlson is a person you'll become familiar with over the next year. Jerry has served the district for almost 25 years in progressively more responsible positions. I'm pleased that she's willing to expand her role yet again, and I am confident in her financial knowledge and expertise. And tonight, in this first public hearing, she will be focused on the 4 other funds beyond the general fund. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Superintendent McLean. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience. It's a pleasure to be here. As we launch into the public hearing for the 2014-15 preliminary budget tonight, I'd just like to remind you, as well as the members of the audience, that we have a long-standing tradition of holding 2 public hearings. My presentation tonight, as Superintendent McLean indicated, really is focusing around the other funds tonight. At the next public hearing and budget adoption meeting, I will be discussing the general fund budget in detail. And you will recall that at the last board meeting, Superintendent McLean did present the preliminary budget recommendations for 2014. She did a PowerPoint, and I've actually made I've made copies available to members of the audience if you'd like that, as well as the materials that I'm going over tonight. So I wanted to first just talk about the budget adoption process. By law, all school districts in Washington must formally adopt a budget by August 31st of each year. The first public hearing for us obviously is tonight, June 10th, and our second public hearing and budget adoption, or board adoption of the budget, was scheduled for the next board meeting, June 24th. However, right now it has been postponed just due to some of the work and some of personal circumstances. So we have yet to determine the meeting for our second public hearing and budget adoption. Public hearing topics, typically we review the general fund, we discuss fund balance, we review other funds, and we accept public comment. Expected board actions upon budget adoption, again, we will make sure we're adopted by August 31. Budget resolution for budget adoption, it sets the appropriation level for all of our funds. It will accept the ASB constitution changes and slate of fundraisers for all of the ASB funds, and it also sets the preliminary tax levies for the calendar year 2015. There are 5 distinct funds in the budget. As Sally mentioned, we're going to be talking about 4 of them tonight. The general fund provides for the daily operations of the school district. Our transportation vehicle fund, that's used to purchase buses and to complete any kind of major repair of buses. Our associated student body fund, also known as ASB, counts for the revenues and the expenditures that are made by the school's associated student body activities, in essence, the students. The debt service fund is used to account for and pay for the principal and interest on our long-term debt. And our capital projects fund is used for the acquisition of land, facilities, as well as the construction of our major capital facilities. Capital projects fund also includes implementation of technology systems as well. Okay, so our first fund that we're looking at tonight is our transportation vehicle fund. As I mentioned, this is the fund that's used to purchase buses. Currently we have a fleet of about 142 buses on the road with an average age of 10 years. I think most people see our big yellow buses all the time, and I'm always impressed. They're always clean. Our oldest bus is 1990, so 24 years old. The revenue source for our transportation vehicle fund basically is made up of state depreciation payments that we receive from the state. What we're looking at for the transportation vehicle fund is a projected beginning fund balance to start the year of $1,072,000. The revenues for that fund will be $658,000 is what we're projecting, again, mostly made up of state depreciation payments. Our expenditures are set at $1,075,000. We're planning to purchase 8 passenger buses. I believe that's made up of 2 transit buses, the great big ones, 4 wheelchair buses, and 2 smaller buses. And then we also, for expenditures, we do put in some spending capacity. Typically it's there just so that we allow ourselves some flexibility in the budget. As you know, the resolution, when we adopt the budget, sets that appropriation level. So by law, we cannot exceed that appropriation level. So we typically try to build in some extra spending capacity there. You can see also that we're budgeting for an ending fund balance of $655,000. And if you notice, that $655,000 really is the same thing as the state depreciation payment. A couple years ago, the legislature changed when we receive our state depreciation payment. It used to be that we received it the first month of our fiscal year, whereas now we don't receive that until the last month of our fiscal year. So it makes it a little difficult to actually spend that money for the year that it really is intended for. So The next fund is the Associated Student Body Fund. There's an acronym that's been out there called CARS, and if you think of it, it's just cultural, athletic, recreation, and social activities. The ASB fund is governed by the Constitution and as well as the students. You do have before you, I've provided you the full Constitution for two of our schools, Todd Beamer High School and Illahee Middle School. They've got some minor changes to their Constitution. The revenue in the ASB fund is generated by fees and fundraisers. And again, when you adopt the budget, basically it's authorizing the expenditure capacity and or the appropriation level, as well as approving the fundraisers. And you also have that in your packet for the secondary and elementary schools. So we're projecting for the ASB fund a beginning fund balance of $785,000 and an ending fund balance of $724,000. That's very typical of what we see every year with our ASB funds, where they're drawing down the fund balance just slightly. And then you can see the revenues and expenditures in the different categories that they account for in that fund: student body, athletics, classes and clubs, and private monies. The debt service fund. Taxes collected by the county are deposited in this particular fund. Again, this fund pays for the outstanding principal and interest payments on our long-term debt. We are assuming for next year's budget that the remaining balance of our 2007 bond authorization will be sold, and that represents about $11.8 million. Those funds will be used or are intended to support the building of Federal Way High School. And currently we've got a calendar year 2015 tax levy set at $17 million. This is subject to change. We have, in years past, we've been able to roll back our tax levies. With the Great Recession, we've tried to hold those tax rates constant for our taxpayers. We are actually looking at an increase in this tax levy for calendar year 2015. Currently, the 2014 tax levy is set at $15,900,000, so it's about a $1.1 million increase. So the debt service fund is slated to have a beginning fund balance of $5.6 million. We've got revenues and transfers in of 17.8. Again, typically that revenue is made up of our tax collections. There's also a little bit of interest rebate that we get, about $737,000 from one of our bond issues, the Build America bonds. And then also in that revenue number is some transfers in that we get. We basically transfer dollars in from our capital projects fund in order to pay for our land payments and the Norman Center payment. So our budgeted ending fund balance is projected to be at $4.5 million. In that expenditure amount of $18.9 million, we also have about $500,000, again, of just spending capacity that's built into that fund. The Capital Projects Fund. 2015 is year 3 of the 6-year capital levy that's supporting Federal Way High School, our playgrounds, and our security cameras. As well as 2015 is also year 5 of our 6-year technology levy. The state match work is virtually all wrapped up. There is about $1.1 million remaining for Illahee Sewer and Totem lighting projects, and we've also got the $12 million set aside for Federal Way High School as well. Also in the Capital Projects Fund, it includes the sale of our remaining 2007 bond issue, the $11.8 million. again, supporting Federal Way High School. And we will continue to see a shortfall in our land fund until our prior or old maintenance and transportation site sells. And we also, in our impact fund, will be negative due to some of the portables that are being placed at our elementary schools this summer. I also don't have on the slide here, but in our capital projects fund, it also for calendar year 2015, it will also set a tax levy at about $14.4 million, which is the $10 million made up each year for the Federal Way High School capital levy that we have, and then the $4.4 million for the tech levy. So for our capital projects fund, we're expecting a beginning fund balance of $16.1 million. We've got revenues coming in to the tune of $25.4 million. Again, that's made up of that capital levy I just spoke of, the $14.4 million, with a $10 million bond sale, and there's also about $1 million of impact fee and E-rate revenue that flows into the capital projects fund. And we've got expenditures slated at $40.6 million, and transfers out to our debt service fund. Again, this is for the land payments as well as the Norman Center payments of $710,000 for a budgeted ending fund balance of $231,000. You can see with that ending fund balance of $231,000, we're really ramping up on our projects, and we are going to be watching our cash flow very, very tightly as the year proceeds. This is just a list of the various capital projects that we've got going on for next year. Federal Way High School, $25.2 million, and as I say this is just the expenditures in essence that we're building capacity for in the 2014-15 budget. Technology is about $5.1 million. Illahee Sewer, $900,000. Our security cameras, $703,000. Our playgrounds, we've got 5 of them slated for the summer of 2015 at $340,000. Those are going to be Adelaide, Brigadoon, Enterprise, Lake Grove, and Mirror Lake. And the Totem lighting electrical project at $200,000. And we've just got some small dollars amount set aside just to close out all of our remaining 2007 bond projects. $85,000 for administration, and the $710,000, while it's not technically an expenditure, but it's a transfer out of our capital projects fund again for that support service center land payment and the Norman Center. And then we also, again, talking about spending capacity, we've built in spending capacity of $8 million. And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but if we looked at just the cash flow that Green Gasaway has put together for us on the Federal Way High project, as we look towards the summer of 2015, we're going through quite a bit of big dollar spending. $4 million a month roughly is what he's got planned. So 2 months could eat that up real quick. This is just a picture. I thought it would be fun to see what they're doing this summer at Camelot Elementary School. This is a picture of the playground that'll be going in there. And some more summer work this year at Olympic View for playgrounds. So next steps, again, tonight is not our budget adoption meeting. This is the first of our public hearings. Next steps, we've got our second public hearing in budget adoption. Date still to be determined. And with that second public hearing and budget adoption, we would expect board action in terms of the motion to adopt any of the ASB constitutional changes, the 2 that we have at Todd Beamer High School and Illahee Middle School. We will have a resolution that will establish the appropriation for all the funds, and we will be setting the preliminary tax levies for the calendar year 2015. comments or
Thank you.
questions?
Any questions of the board?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for years we've had, Sally been the one that came and presented, and we knew that you were one of the amazing parts of that team that puts together our budget every year. And I just appreciate the detail, and obviously a ton of thought and planning goes into that. It's very, very complex, and I appreciate you making it very simple and understand tonight, so thank you.
Thank you. I told Sally I like putting the numbers together better than I do the presentation. So.
You did a great job.
Yeah, we know you love that microphone.
Yeah, yeah. I think we don't have any.
Okay.
So we'll now go to public comment.
Okay.
Charlie Hop. It's the only one I have for the budget public comment.
Well, I've seen some interesting things this evening, and bear with me here. The analogy of Swiss cheese I thought was very good this evening. I'd like to talk about some holes that I think we ought to be filling in the budget. And number one would be the JROTC budget. We only have JROTC at 2 of our high schools. This program has been acclaimed almost every year by not only the JROTC people, but by people within the school district. This is a program that we should be offering to all kids, not simply those at 2 of the high schools. Now, Sally said last meeting that we have more money this year than we used to. This ought to be one of those holes in the Swiss cheese that we ought to be filling. Secondly, we have a lot of great programs in this district. Unfortunately, most kids can't take advantage of most of them because we don't have the transportation to get them to those particular facilities. This is the time when we could provide that. We could provide ways to get kids to the automotive program at Decatur that don't live in the Decatur collection area. We could do that. There are ways to do that, as an example. And finally, on that issue, I have heard, and perhaps I'm incorrect, that we have placed some enrollment limits on some of our programs. Kids cannot get in, I'm told, into the Cambridge program, into the IB program, because we have placed limits. If this is true, we need to change that, I think. Now, and finally, I've had the pleasure of working on the roadmap committee that has to do with career and college readiness. And this is an area where I think we have some real shortcomings, and it's not just me. Education Week put out a state report card, and while Washington has some B's and C's, this is one where we have an F. We do not do this well, and we have the opportunity to do it differently. And then I'm working with the ESD in Spokane, and he provided these figures, which show that we're not really very successful at keeping kids in college, particularly Latinos, even Asians. Tremendous drop at the end of the first year. Now, at the Roadmap Committee, we have had large discussions which are designed to address the State Board of Education. I'll be finished in a moment.
No, go ahead.
With the idea that we need college and career staffing. This is something that the guidance department is overloaded with, cannot do well considering their other responsibilities, and there are people that probably can do this that can work the different hours that would make this work right. We have these opportunities now to improve the outcome for our kids. We can do these things. And I would urge you to consider thinking about these as things we could be doing. All of these things, I think, are what we owe the kids of Federal Way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on the budget? Okay. We now are back in our regular meeting. We have ended the public hearing. We have no policy review tonight. Is there anything further that any of the board members want to bring forward or add? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.